I saw a dappled wonder settling across the fields, hovering on angel wings, brandishing a blazing shield.
Where do they go? The ones that run away and never return.
There is nothing here but suffering, pain and suffering. It is time to go.
The girl in that bulletin is wanted for the murder of a child.
Man lost my mom, then me. Ain't no way he ever given up on finding me.
There's anger in you. It'll fuel you, yes, well. What's the worst kind of fuel? The worst kind. Savagery a man is capable of when he believes his cause to be just.
You came all this way on the railroad?
Yeah. I left behind all those peoples.
Nothing was given. All was earned. Hold on to what belongs to you. What's her name?
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today we have an exciting roundtable for you as we talk to Mr. Barry Jenkins, as well as some of the stars of the exciting Amazon series, The Underground Railroad. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to our facilitator, the lovely Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Reggie Ponder from Chicago, KB in Houston, Carla Renata in Los Angeles, Ruben Ricard in Miami, Beandria July in Los Angeles, Brandon Collins in New York, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Rebecca Ford in Chicago, Sharonda Williams in Atlanta, and Rhonda Rasha Penrice, who normally lives in Atlanta, but today is in Montana. I'm gonna let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
Hello, Brandon Collins from the Media Popcorn Podcast. My question is for Mr. Jenkins. It's regarding your process for adapting this really popular novel, and how did you make sure that it's still, when you're making this project, it was authentic to your voice as a writer and a director?
Yeah, this is the third adaptation I guess I've done in a row now, between coming off of Moonlight and Beale Street. And my first job in the industry was working at Harper Films for Miss Winfrey, which was all about adaptations as well. I was there when Darnell Martin and Susan Laurie Parks adapted Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God. And then Darnell actually adapted Miss Morrison's Paradise, which didn't go forward. So I've kind of been in that world. In this case, it was cool because, Coulson gave us his blessing, but didn't want to be directly involved. And so we did a writer's room for the project, which was a new experience for me. Typically I adapt in isolation, but in this case we adapted as a group. And it was really dope understanding, what about the book was going to translate very well into the film medium. And then once we had those bits and pieces, what about the translation itself was going to lend itself to an expansion, of the themes and of the world and of the lives of the characters. So once we got into the flow, it just kind of, it was like this snowball rolling downhill and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But it was great because the process the group that was responsible for the adaptation got bigger and bigger as well. So yeah, it was pretty fluid.
Great, thank you so much, and great job, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi guys, this is Reggie Ponder, the real critic out of Chicago. And I kind of want to ask Thuso this question, but I think it's more appropriate to ask her collaborators. So I'm gonna ask you, Aaron, to go first, and maybe Barry and William can chime in. But can you guys speak to her ability to have us root for, identify with her, and even be mad with her for me, this is one of those special performances that really elevates the narrative. And I like, go ahead, just go ahead and talk about her power.
Yeah, for me, and I think, everybody will share this opinion, Thuso is extraordinarily gifted. And not only that, but she is entirely open and entirely generous and never gives anything but everything every time she steps onto set. And to be in the presence of somebody who can do that for that extended period of time is a real gift and a real honor. And we're thankful for her and we appreciate her.
I'll jump in. I agree with everything that Aaron said. And I honestly have rarely been around that kind of dedication. I mean, it's pretty amazing, when you show up on set and someone is just in it, doing something really, really hard every single day. And, it's like, we're showing up, here and there, and it's rough. It's really tough. And it's like, and I think that, just the fact that Thuso was able to like carry this narrative the way that she did. And then also on top of that, be willing to just like joke with this in between sets or in between takes here and there and stuff like that when it was appropriate, when it was like, something that wouldn't pull us out of the scene too much. It's pretty amazing to watch. So it really just kind of, there's no way to not root for Thuso, to not just empathize. Just because, she's just a superior creator and superior person in so many ways.
I'll just piggyback those. Reggie, I think it's a great question, because at the beginning of the show, I remember showing it to some folks very early in the process, and they were like, I don't know that I like her. And I was like, good, you're not supposed to like her at the beginning. She's angry, she's bitter, she's pissed at the world. And, this guy tells her she's special, and she's like, to hell with you. You know what I'm saying? Just because you got gray eyes don't mean you can tell me I'm special and I'm just going to fall on the floor. I will say I've had many female friends who've seen the show now tell me, if a man who looks like that asks me to go anywhere, I'm going to say yes. But I will say, I love that, Thuso felt the freedom to have the character be unlikable, air quotes, be bitter, be angry. She has full possession of herself, or she has access to her full humanity. And part of that is, I don't like you. I don't like nothing right now. So I think it is a great thing to spotlight in the performance, because in the book, you get to hear all these things inside Cora's head. In the show, you got to just read it on Thuso's wonderful face. And I think she did a great job at that.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Thuso, phenomenal performance. Thank you so much.
You can tell Reggie from Chicago with that hat, bro. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. Chicago or Detroit, one or the other.
KB here with the Color Grade podcast. And my question is for Barry. So, this is one of the most beautiful and deeply layered bodies of work that I have ever seen. So in adapting and directing this, can you talk a bit about the vital importance of showcasing Black love in its many forms, and how, all of the Black love that Cora experiences on her journey really informs it? Because I do appreciate that the story is not just filled with trauma, that it's also filled with love.
Yeah, that was one of the things when I first spoke to Colson. I told him that I had no interest in directing this as a feature because it wouldn't give us enough space to have Cora go on this journey where she gets to explore these different kinds of love. In Beale Street, we had all these different songs that were named after agape, eros, all these different phases of love. And it's nice in the show, you get to see Cora go through all those waves, from philia to eros to agape. The creation of the character Grace or Fanny Briggs was about giving Cora the opportunity to understand, the situation that Mabel found herself in and that Ajari found herself in, to learn this maternal love. And then through that, this idea of maternal sacrifice in a certain way. And so it was something that was really important. But, you know, one of the beauties of doing an adaptation, to go back to the original question, is so much of that stuff was already threaded in. And maybe I think in those moments when we were doing some of the heavier work, you know, especially Thuso and Aaron, who were there at the beginning of the shoot, you always knew that there was going to be light somewhere, you know, that there was going to be this process of the character putting herself back together again with the help of all these other characters that she comes across. So yeah, it was really crucial to us, because I knew I was going to have to tell the truth, you know, about the trauma, about the brutality. But I think the fact that, especially looking at this panel, you know, all of us on this call, you know, for every act of brutality, there must have been 20, 40, 50, 100 acts of nurturing, of love, to put people back together again, so that we could all, you know, go on through generations and tell our ancestor stories. So yeah, it was very important. And it's something that the cast and the crew, and especially our guidance counselor therapist, Ms. Kim, that she was adamant about making sure we were aware of as well, that there was some light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, thank you so much. Beautiful job, everyone. It is a brilliant piece of work.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
Hi, Katya, what's Cup of Social? My question is for Thuso. You played this young woman who's going through a tremendous thing. And one of the things I want to specifically ask you is about faith from Black people, not necessarily religion, because one of the things that she held on to is faith as it was taught to by her mother via her ancestors. And talk about why you may have felt personally, how did your faith get you through this difficult piece of work?
Never thought of that one for Cora, because I think that's the one thing that set me apart from Cora, who within her own community has been separated. And whatever it is that the community would have held faith-wise, I think she would have actively rebelled against, because she's been to some extent hurt by that community. Whereas with me, I am driven by faith. I am, you know, I'm pursuing purpose in everything that I do. And I've shared in the past that had it not been for my faith, I probably would have taken my life a couple of years ago. And for Cora, it's that thing of, where is this God that you speak of? She has had to take care of herself up until this point. I could say that she has faith in Caesar when she follows after him and she trusts him and she puts, you know, her entire trust in him. I didn't ever find myself while playing Cora feeling like there's faith in something bigger than her. It was her moving during the show was an act of survival more than anything.
Great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. But Barry could say something. I don't know.
Yeah, no. It's interesting because we're talking about faith, but also talking about religion in a certain way. And religion for these characters is a very interesting thing. It does make appearances, especially in the first chapter. In the last chapter, and then it makes some not so nice appearances in other places. But whenever it asserted itself, because I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, my Uncle Billy doing all his preaching, and I've always had faith in faith, you know, which is sort of, maybe it's a cop-out, I don't know. But I've always had faith in faith. And so whenever it appeared on the set or in the scenes, I wanted to embrace it. But I think Thuso's right. It's not something that Cora readily embraces, because everything about the world has told her that John Valentine says it so well, you know, everything your life has shown you was a trick. You know, this must be a delusion too. And so I think Thuso's right. I think Cora would actively reject these things, and yet the show doesn't reject them. I don't think she does either, because they're constantly making appearances. And and again, I'm a person who has faith in faith, and that's why there's so many of these faithful symbols and some religious symbols throughout the show. But in the Mabel chapter, when they bury Polly and Moses' child, we set up this ceremony, and the ceremony was rooted in the ancient rituals with the shells and the sacred space, the reclaimed earth. And I love the line where Jockey says, maybe where maybe Moses saw a little bit of God in this child's face. And then he puts his head to the soil and he inhales the earth. And to me, it's a spiritual act. Maybe it's a religious act, but it is something about having faith in faith. And I think if Korra's on this journey, if there was a season 2, bruh, if there was a season 2, you know, I think her and Ali and Molly, Ali and Molly, might end up somewhere. And depending on where they land, this idea of faith in faith, it might start to assert itself even further. It's interesting. There was prayer on set behind camera much more than there was on camera, is what I would say.
Thank you so much.
Hi guys, my name is Ruben Peralta from cocalecas.net. My question is for Thuso and Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Jenkins says something in an article that Korra's story is not just for America. It's a story that resonates with Black people all over the world. What do you mean by this affirmation? And for Thuso too, my question.
Yeah, no, I was having this conversation with Nicole Hannah-Jones, and we were trying to unpack some of this stuff that people are talking about with the way we built the cast and things like that. And we started talking about resistance struggle and this idea that wherever Black folks have landed on this planet, you know, as they've migrated, as they found themselves places not the continent of Africa, there's always this very initial, this very foundational idea of resistance struggle, because everything about the world, unfortunately, is designed to, on surface, on appearance, reject you, interrogate you, investigate you. And so I think in that way, there is something about the journey that Korra is going on, the journey that Royal and all the conductors are building, the journey that Caesar is going on, because all he wants to do is fight for the assertion of his full self. That's something I feel, you know, I've only been one Black person, but I feel that my encounters with other Black folks all over the places I've traveled over the world, that thing is very common. There's a commonality in that experience. And I do think as you watch the show, you can see that thing in spades, so much so that when we get to Valentine Farm, I'm looking at William and Thuso right now, you know, they have that little conversation and he's like, you know, maybe it ain't time yet. And she's like, well, what good is all this special stuff? What good is this farm if only special folk can till it? What good is the railroad if only special folk can take it? You know, even within the spectrum of melanated folks, there's still all these things we have to talk about. But the one thing we all have in common is when that melanin is the only thing that looks like itself in these foreign spaces or any spaces, that is a very common experience and very unique to the very idea of being Black, not even in America, but on this planet. And I think in that way, yeah, there is something universal for melanated people, you know, in the story of the Underground Railroad.
Thuso?
Yo, I mean, Barry done said everything in terms of, you know, the Black body globally, understanding and having experienced oppression coming from spaces, again, from Africa, different parts of Africa as well, and seeing Black bodies in different spaces globally, where now you're told where that it's in the past, that, you know, it's done with, but the fact that you're Black means that you're still experiencing the world as if parts of the past are in your present. So, and having experienced watching the show with friends of mine who are from South Africa, going, oh my gosh, I didn't know that this is what African Americans went through, and coming from a place where they think that, you know, apartheid was the hardest thing to have ever happened to the Black body. And now seeing and understanding that there was a Black body in a different space that went through something just as hard. And you can plot these things in different parts of Africa, and again, different Black bodies in different parts of the world, having gone through such trauma and brutality simply because they're Black.
Hi, Carolyn Firster, Here's What Happened podcast and Carolyn Talks. So my question is for both Thuso and Barry, and it has to do with the symbolism of Black femininity and also Black motherhood and the connection of mothers and daughters. I realized throughout the series, we don't really get as much of a glimpse into the relationship until the very end. And then you realize a lot of Korra's struggle, especially her resistance to connections and relationships, has to do with the loss of her mother. So could you just tell me about translating that from a book where so much of the dialogue is her internal dialogue, and putting it on the screen? And for Thuso, could you just tell me about acting that and finding those parts of Cora and her connection to Mabel throughout the series?
Yeah, I'll go first and I'll be short. Yeah, the book is structured the same way as the show. The reader gets the information about Mabel at the end of the book. And even though Cora has this interior voice, Coulson is the voice of God in that book. And so the information the reader's getting, Cora doesn't get. And I wanted to preserve that in making the show, because I do think real life happens that way as well. There are things about my mom's life that I didn't learn until I was in my mid-20s that really explained the reason why our relationship was as fractured, as estranged as it was. Why I didn't get that biography, I do not know. And I was kind of upset that it took 25 years for it to get to me. And so I wanted to preserve that feeling for the character, but also for the viewer, because again, I think that the emotions that Cora displays, the sense of abandonment, the hurt that she feels is very justified. And we shouldn't need to understand why she's feeling this way to accept with validity that she can feel this way. Maybe in that way, it's a bit of a gut punch for the audience to realize, oh, that's why she was so mean at the beginning. It's like, yeah, because the world has been mean as hell to her. The fact that she doesn't understand the tragedy of why that is, that's neither here nor there. That's real life for a lot of folks. But what we did try to do, though, is because we can't do the interior voice, as you said, I think I said it earlier, we tried to give Cora, because life is sometimes like this as well. You go like, I'm making all this shit. I don't know why I'm making these movies. I don't know why did I make Moonlight? That's about Terrell. I get to the end, I'm like, oh wait, that was about me and my mom. Then I make Beale Street, and I'm like, oh, Regina's gonna play this character. Oh yeah, that's James Baldwin. Oh shit, that's about my mom as well. Then I make this thing, and we pull Sheila, and I'm like, oh, that's not about me. It's like, oh shit, that's about my mom as well. You don't realize it, and I think with Cora going through this journey with Grace, she doesn't realize it. She doesn't realize it. And so much about this generational trauma and all these things about the cycles repeating. I don't like the word generational trauma, because it's like, if you punch my great granddaddy in the chin, then I'm going to feel it 160 years later. It's like, no. Every generation, one of y'all is punching one of us in the chin. And so I want to decentralize this generational trauma thing. However, what I do believe in is there's a way to break the cycle. And through her experience with Grace, she does not leave that little girl back there. And then she even goes back and gets Miss Molly. And then she plants them seeds. People say she buries the seeds. She plants them seeds, because somebody else is going to come through that tunnel. They're going to get to the top of that hill, and there's going to be that little bit of sustenance from the continent of Africa. This seed that cannot be destroyed is going to be there. And so even though I couldn't do the interior voice the way you said, I thought, oh, we can give Cora the same journey. She won't realize it until she's 68 years old, sitting in her rocking chair, and she's going to realize, oh, yeah, we did that. And then Molly go come in and put the little blanket over her knees and whatnot. And Molly's man go come in with them grandchildren. And just in that picture, you're going to see the cycle was broken. This abandonment, not that it was worth it, but it's not, we're not abandoned 5 generations later. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, Thuso, I talk too much. I'm sorry. I apologize.
You do, Barry, you do, but you answer the questions for both of us.
This is what I have to deal with.
So on my end, it really was, again, that thing of Cora is living on survival. All she knows up until the point where Caesar reaches out to her is herself. She's had to look out for herself on the plantation, she's kept her head down. But I wouldn't say everyone, but we first see her instinct kick in when she protects Chester, when Terrence hit him. There's that act of protection because she's identifying someone, because I think in the book it explains that Chester is also an orphan, so she's helping someone that she feels can't help themselves. Even with Grace, it's someone, she's in the attic, she's been there for 9, we don't determine if it's 9 months, 9 weeks, 9 years or whatever, and so for her, because she knows what it feels like to not be protected, to not be taken care of, that is what makes sense. And for me, tapping into that, I think that part of Cora was naturally that much easier for me to tap into, because that is also my lived experience. And I'll stop there because Barry handled everything else.
Great, thank you so much.
I'm Beyondria. I'm here for Public Radio Exchange and I'm based in LA. My question is for Barry. I feel like not enough people are talking about the wonder of episode 9. For me, it's just one of the best pieces of American television I've seen in a really long time. It's family business. It brings up so many conversations that we have had it for centuries, but also are still having. And I wonder if you could unpack, because I watched all 10 episodes like back to back a few weeks ago, then I let it marinate. And then today I rewatched 1 and 9. And it just made me cry because there was so much beauty. Like, 20 minutes in, this is all gonna blow up. And just the beauty of Blackness and then the, inevitable specter of white supremacy that comes in. But also to see Black people fight back, like when they're attacked, and to see them fight back, that I've never seen before in that way. And it was just really, really important and just vital for me. So I wonder if you could unpack episode 9 a little bit, both like what stayed in your mind from filming it and to now.
What stayed in my mind from filming it was how tired we were. Because we filmed that one, we filmed about 85 days, and then we took the New Year's holiday break, and then we came back and finished the show. And so we were like, my longest shoot was 35 days. So we were like deep in it. And with Georgia, we had one group of background actors, and then we moved to Indiana. We had a whole different group. Will was there in South Carolina for a hot second down in Savannah, but Aaron wasn't there, and so it was a whole new world. And it was getting folks, my memory of it is getting folks not reinvested, but invested in what we were doing, making sure they understood that they were a part of what we were doing, and then building up to this moment where so many of these themes, these emotions that we've been sort of picking around at. I think the first 8 episodes are very similar to my past work, where everything is suggested, nothing is outright stated. Then you get to episode 9, and it's like, we just gonna talk about it all, and we just gonna hash it all out. And for me, it functions 2 different ways. One, just from a craft standpoint, is like knowing the journey the audience has been on. How can I shift gears? How many times can I shift gears, and keep the audience with me? That episode rides about 3 different waves. At a certain point, you're like, wait, is Michael Bay directing the show? What the hell is happening? And it was really fun being able to dial those things in. But the biggest thing for me, man, was, you're right. Our folks had to fight back. As much as I loved Watchmen when that aired, I wanted that opening to be with those characters, in a deeper way. And I think if that show had more time, then our episode 9 would basically be episode 1, of Watchmen in a certain way. Not that we were thinking of this in that way, but that's kind of what it is. In order to really get this action sequence, to have this really deep dramatic underpinning, we need to know what's being lost, like what's at stake. And when Mingo and Valentine are having this conversation, to me, that was about, we never talk about Booker T. Washington had a family. I'm not a Booker T. Washington apologist, but I'm also not dismissing Booker T. Washington outright. And so I thought, oh, this character Mingo, this is Booker T. But this guy clearly loved his people, clearly. Let's get into this. Let's dig in. I want to see my man dance with his lady, because Booker T danced with his lady. And so it was like really fun understanding that. I told the studio, this one's going to be long. This one's going to be long, but I promise you, it's going to be dope. It is going to be fire. And so we allowed ourselves to go to all the different places. The scene with William and Cora is one of my favorites. William and Cora, I'm sorry, bro. With William and Thuso is one of my favorites, because at that point we were just so in it that we shot the opening of that episode on one day, and I wanted this conversation between Thuso and Will to happen somewhere beautiful. And the DP, I said, hey, just go find a place. And he just walked off. So we're shooting the other scene without him. And then he said, yo, I think I got a spot. And we went to this tree, and it's one of the most simply shot scenes in the whole show. I just said, hey, just take the camera. There's 3 of y'all. It's William, Thuso, and my cinematographer, James Lax. And I was like, y'all go and just find the intimacy in this moment. And they just did it. And I was like, it was like a feather floating. And I thought, okay, cool. We're gonna have sledgehammers and feathers. Sledgehammers and feathers. That's what this episode is about. And yeah, it's kind of the kitchen sink. But I think our story is it's the kitchen damn sink. I mean, there's nothing this country has been through that isn't directly related to or through the prism of or at the expense of, or in some ways through the grace of Black people. And I think that episode is, unfortunately, but somehow we pulled it off. It's about all that. So I want to talk about that episode more. So thank you for the question. This is weird. Nobody's really talking about it. I'm like, yo, this episode is dope, bro.
Revolutionary. Thank you so much. I'll pass to my colleague, the Curvy.
Oh, I see Sharonda's got the image behind her right there. Yeah, you do. I came for Will on that day, bro. I came for him on that day. I came for him. But you did it, bro. You did it.
Hi, Barry. I'm Carla Renata, the Curvy film critic. And what I'd like to know is, Cora has these okra seeds that are like her good luck charm that she's walking around with from state to state, from situation to situation. And I feel like for you, your composer, Nicholas Britell, is your okra seed because he comes with you from project to project to project. How did you collaborate with him on this particular project, especially for the music in the end credits? Because it ranged from everything from hip hop to classical. And I was, for each episode, I was waiting for the end credits just so I could hear what music y'all were gonna throw in at the end. So I just wanted to know how you and Nick collaborated on making that happen.
Yeah, it was pretty organic. A lot of stuff with this show was organic. Rather than trying to control everything, I just at some point decided to free myself up. The okra seeds happened by accident. One of the people in the art department came to me and showed me a pod of, actually, I thought it was just a dried thing. I was like, well, what is this? He's like, oh, it's okra. I was like, it doesn't look like any okra I've ever seen, because my grandma was from the Bahamas. She used to cook okra, and I hated it as a kid because it was so slimy, man. I grew into it as I got older. Now I love okra. But he wrung it out, and all these seeds fell on my desk, and he picked one up and he said, no matter how dry this gets, if you plant it, it will grow. Which to me was just a symbol of Black folks. This thing came from the continent, and you cannot kill it. Its life force will always replenish itself. And so I thought, oh, this is Cora's legacy. She's gonna take this with her. And then as we're making the show, I kept trying to figure out, well, where is she taking it to? Because Thuso can tell you, in the South Carolina episode, Ridgway actually finds it. He goes into the dorm and he takes it from underneath her bed, because that was the first episode we shot. But as I'm learning the show, I was like, oh, that can't happen. So we cut that scene out. And then magically, Cora gets to North Carolina, and now Grace is talking about it. And I'm just trying to figure out, what does this little girl say to her? And Grace says, you should plant them. Why are you carrying around okra? It ain't what they meant for. And I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. That's just me and Mike Abella riffing. And I was like, okay, cool. Message. I got to do something with that. And that was how we ended up at the point where I learned maybe 3 days before we shot the ending of the show, which we shot on day 50, she's got to plant these seeds, on the top of this hill, which was a scene I wrote for Thuso about 2 days before we shot it. Didn't talk to her about it, didn't rehearse it. And the reason why they're just standing there at the beginning of the scene is because nobody knows we're rolling. And I finally call out action, and Thuso just goes and does it. And James and I are there with the camera, and we're just following Thuso. And what's in the show is take one. It's completely unrehearsed. We're just kind of following, kind of like the life force of this beautiful South African woman playing my lead. And so just like that, same thing with Nick and I. We just chase, we just follow, trying to see where the energy of the episode, the energy of the characters is going. The music shifts every time we get to a state because Cora shifted. And then once we get to Tennessee, Cora's no longer in control of the narrative. So we stop with music. Now Nick and I said, it's just sound. Ridgway doesn't get music, he gets sound. And so we took what we were making the music out of in the first 3 episodes, and we just started breaking it. And we'd figure out what sounds we can make out of the broken music. And that's how we scored the Tennessee episodes. The needle drops at the end of the episodes, that wasn't Nick. That was, we stopped filming. All these protests were happening, and people, justifiably so, people were taking the score from Beale Street, and they were using it to score videos of people giving speeches at these protests. I thought, oh, this is crazy. We made this period piece and people are using it to underscore this very contemporary happening. And then we were cutting the episode, because one of the first episodes that finished editing was the first Indiana episode. And so Cora comes out of her love dream with Caesar. It's the one episode where she gets both her mins. And so she's like in this love dream with Caesar. Then she wakes up and she walks in the Royals cabin, and the camera comes around, she walks out. And I started hearing Amel LaRue. I started hearing the song from my high school years of this Black woman in 1995 singing of her heartbreak. And I thought, oh, and now I have this other Black woman in 1855 feeling the same heartbreak. We're connected. This is the legacy. This is generational trauma, generational yearning, generational joy. This is what's also passed on. And I thought, oh, this is where we can use contemporary music. That was the first one we did. Then after that, it was like a game. Because I was like, yo, Ridgway's talking so much shit. He just talking. This is America. This is America. This is America. And then I was like, oh, Donald's going to have the final say. This is America. And so it became a game like that, which when you're making something that's heavy, you need something that's fun, a little bit of levity. And the needle drops kind of became that for us.
I appreciated all of it, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renata. Oh, Miss Carla, excuse me. Thank you, Carla.
It's all good.
Hi, Sharona Williams from Pair Weight. I want to open this question up for the entire cast because, Barry, like you said, this is a piece that's beautiful at times, but it still reminds you of the pain of the past and really angers you to realize that that pain is still continuing on today. And what I wanted to ask about all of you is I wanted to know how you found your peace while performing in such, at times a difficult series, but also to Barry, I know you mentioned the guidance counselors. I want to talk to you about how you found your peace leading up to pre-production and actually shooting the series, but also to finding peace for the audience and how you decided to structure. Because I'm not gonna lie, Georgia, that was tough. That was really tough. And that's a bold choice to make for a first episode of a TV series. So I really want all of you to speak towards that. And Barry, we can start with you.
Yeah, and this time I will be short, I promise. The book opens in Georgia, and it's tough. Then the show had to open in Georgia, and it was tough. I actually tried to find a way to not open the show in Georgia, but every time I did, for a story that has already a conceit of this railroad being an actual railroad, it just felt like I was trying to avoid the truth, of what was at the foundation of the piece. I was trying to avoid the truth of the experience of the characters. And so I quickly abandoned that. And what I tried to do was frame it as though, everything's about showing versus telling. I think in a book, you tell everything, you kind of show nothing because, the reader is not seeing anything except what they want themselves to see, what they will allow themselves to see. This is all about showing. And so I had to make the choice. I have this character, as we were saying earlier, who's basically given up on everything. It takes an extreme act to motivate her to the place where she decides, okay, I am going to take this chance. I am going to try to take back myself and flee this place. I haven't given up entirely. And so those two acts, the act where she throws herself atop the boy Chester, which is actually a heroic act, and then being forced to bear witness to this very brutal act, I decided we had to show those. In research, those things happened, and many, many worse things happened, even going into the 20th century in the Jim Crow era. So I felt like I had to tell the truth and show those things. And it was difficult. I tried to always find a way, if I was showing this thing, what else was I saying about it that wasn't just about the acute trauma of the act? And I'll speak about the Big Anthony sequence very quickly. Typically, when we see an image like that in a show like this or a movie like this, the person is only responding to acute trauma. They're either yelling out in pain or they're begging for their life. And I decided in this act, we weren't going to do that. Instead, Big Anthony both speaks to the fellow enslaved who are forced to witness. He tells them no more masters, no more slaves. And then he addresses directly the person grieving him, as opposed to yelling out in fear. He says, God damn you, God damns you. And so I felt like by adding those things to the scenes, I was earning the right to present them. So yeah, it was a tough choice, but it is the truth, unfortunately. And Miss Kim was real good about watching me. I was trying to be strong, for everybody, Miss Kim was our guidance counselor, but she did pull me off set one day and told me I wasn't as strong as I thought I was, and I had to talk to her.
And for the rest of the cast, William, Aaron, just how do you find peace in such a difficult subject matter to convey your performances on screen?
I mean, honestly, you know, I found myself, especially in when we were shooting episode 9, I found myself like kind of going outside of myself a little bit and sort of feeling like I was going to lose control, you know, because I was just sort of reacting to the situation. And, you know, there's a lot of things about, you know, what happens in that episode that, I mean, stuff that happened like a couple of years ago, you know, so it's like it all lives very, very closely to my memory, and so I you know, I think honestly the thing that helped was, you know, as a cast, we all really took care of each other. We all checked in a lot, and you know, when we could just sort of drop things, we did, you know, and you know, we did a significant amount of hanging out and just sort of, you know, reminding ourselves that we're here to tell this story. We have the utmost respect for each other. And, you know, I think that just sort of having reminders that I'm around people that feel like this story needs to be told, we're all on the same team, that helps. But it's tough. I mean, I definitely took a little bit of that, you know, of that episode home with me for a while, and it took a minute to sort of shake that off, which I don't normally do. I mean, usually I'm able to sort of like, oof, okay, that's over. But you know, like honestly, it was because it was so triggering, I was a little bit shook for a while. But again, I think it's just sort of having, like, knowing that everyone is there to try to render this story as truthfully as possible and wanting to render this story as truthfully as possible. It's not about the sensation, it's about the pain and the truth and making sure that's palpable and something that people can sort of invest in. And so that helps. But yeah, I really don't know. I think it really just time, you know, just time away from it afterwards. You know, I was able to sort of shake some things off, but it took a minute.
I think that's a really great question and a really important question. And Barry hasn't actually heard me say this before. This is probably the first time he's heard me say it, but for me, and I think everyone shares this view, Barry is the epitome of a leader. And the reason I say that is because, yes, he had this enormous task ahead of him, but what he kept at the forefront of his mind throughout this whole process was our mental, spiritual, and emotional well-being. That was first. He went as far as to have a guidance counselor on set. And I think irrespective of whether you utilize that service or not, it's the knowing that there is someone there, if and when you need, to help you out of that particularly dark space. So that's the first thing I want to give a nod to in regards to how I found my peace throughout this process. And in addition to that, as William so articulately said, you know, it's like the cast, you know, and the crew and everybody involved in this production, everyone had the same objective, which was to tell this story as authentically and truthfully as we possibly could to honor those who experienced it. And I think, you know, in addition to that also, I think just, you know, having conversations and unpacking things in a context that was away from work was helpful. And spending time with one another away from work, you know, that was also quite helpful during this time.
Yeah, everything that the others have said, Barry was there as someone who was constantly checking in We had the guidance counselor who would come to me even if I hadn't called on her. The cast itself, like I would literally be on Aaron, just like holding on to him in random moments, even if we weren't on a take, because I wasn't feeling okay. And that gave me that peace in that moment. I could talk to William at any point. But I also knew that for myself, I owed it to myself to constantly check in with myself, to introspect, to differentiate between Cora and Thuso at all times, because I couldn't afford to carry Cora outside into the real world. It would have been really heavy. So I had my friends checking in on me. And then after wrapping production, I saw a therapist so that she could help me debrief and separate the two. But yeah, everybody said, cast and crew was the biggest support and greatest of balance. Is that English? I don't know. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ford, and I'm in Chicago. And today I'm writing for the trades. So I'd like to get great quotes from you guys. I'm addressing this to everybody in the cast and Barry. And my question is about Chase Dillon. You know, what is he like as a kid, as an actor, and how did you get the performance that you wanted from him? Reading his EPK, he seemed to be like really into Homer. So talk about Chase Dillon.
Yeah, Chase is awesome, man. He's a big bundle of energy. Very different than Homer and his actual personality and persona. You know, Joel's not on this call, but you know, I definitely have to give Joel a lot of credit for the work that Chase did in the show. When you have a child, I mean, Chase was 10 years old when we filmed this. When you have an actor that young, the person in the scene with them is helping to guide them through. Absolutely. But he was great. For me, it was more about making sure Chase understood, you know, what it was the character was doing. He always understood on the surface, but you know, you had to make sure there was the space, there was the environment for him to understand what needed to happen beneath the surface with the character, because you know, we got a lot of surprises built into that Homer character, especially if you know him from the book. You know, he does a lot of different things in the show. And for me, my responsibility, I felt, was creating an environment where Chase would succeed, you know, because once you call action, you know, then the child is, you know, he's got to dance, you know, is his to do what he's going to do with it. And so we were always trying to find the best process, you know, that would allow Chase to do his best work. And sometimes that meant, you know, not calling cut, you know, and sometimes that meant, you know, even if the other actor doesn't love to improv, you know, creating an environment where Chase can be completely improvisational, but then you need a control within the same scene, which oftentimes was Joel. But yeah, he was pretty dope, man. It's wild to be, you know, in a way you asked about how do we keep ourselves together. There were times where, because what we were doing was so heavy, and then you just look at this kid, and when you call cut, Chase is gonna dance, he's gonna smile. It's almost like he's gonna find a way to remind everybody, hey, we just playing. You know, I know we spending all this money and there's all this big equipment, but we just playing, right? And it's like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. We are just playing. You know, what we're doing is very serious, but it's nowhere near as serious as what our ancestors actually went through, for one. And then two, I like to say we can't devour ourselves, you know, in the creation of these images. And Chase was really good at helping us, and helping remind us of that fact. Homer, you don't have any scenes with Chase, right, Aaron? Thuso, I know you had quite a few. Ooh, my God.
Yes. Chase was awesome. I got to hang out with Chase before we even started shooting, and even getting into shooting. I remember Barry had told us that we are not allowed to hug, which was hard. Which was hard because we built a relationship like prior to starting the shoot. And so trying to understand and be that person where, okay, I have to put that distance between Thuso and Chase for the sake of Cora and Homer was tricky because, you know, obviously I'm like 28 years old, he's 10 years old. I can switch just like that. So I had to rely on Barry and Joel to have the conversations with him, because I didn't want it to feel like a personal rejection if I started just like ignoring him in the moment, you know. But he came up.
No, tell the truth, man. Thuso lying. Because I'd be on their social media, and on the weekends I would see, oh, why is Thuso doing karaoke at Chase's house? You know, why are they at the bowling alley? I'm like, what? I'm like, no, this is not. I'm sorry, man. No, because at some point this kid's got to be a little bit method, and this is not the way. But somehow they managed to have their weekend. It'd be Thuso, Joel, and Chase hanging out doing karaoke, and I'm like, bruh, this is not what I need. This is not what I need. But I realize now though it was exactly what Chase needed. And so again, I think the work that Thuso and Joel did with Chase, you know, I have to give them, you know, partial credit for making a very comfortable environment for him to be able to go to the places that he needed to go to.
Thuso, did you have more to add? Oh, okay. All right. And then what about he's 10. What about him growing up? Did that affect your?
It didn't. He, you know, Micah Bella was the one who grew up. You know, she had to film scenes. It's interesting. She was on day 1 and she was on the last day of production. For whatever reason, you know, Grace was sort of like the guiding light for the whole show. She was day 1 and she was the last day of filming. That last day of filming was 6 months after we had to stop because of COVID. And so she's much taller in certain scenes in the show. But Chase, no, the growth that he did do was you really saw him grow into the process. You know, the moment at the end of episode 9, I don't know that Chase would have been able to do that on day 5, you know, but we filmed that on day like 110. And we also filmed it in a way where Chase didn't know the camera was coming back to him. I didn't know the camera was coming back to him. Our Steadicam op on the show, Jared Morgan, was amazing. He's a genius. But Cora gets on the wagon with Molly, and I just walked over to James because we were outside the set. I whispered to him, I said, go back. And so the camera then just very fluidly, I said, in the show, we always say in the show, like, I don't want to have to edit, go back. And so he creates this new shot, and he just drifts all the way back to Chase. And Chase hasn't heard anybody call cut. So he's still Homer. And what he does at that moment is so, oh my goodness, it's amazing. And I think we realized that you know, we started the scene, but we're not going to end it, you know, because I know Chase is there. And so, and everybody rallies to be like, here we go. The 10-year-old kid, he's there. You know, now it's on us. He's doing the thing. Now we got to do the damn thing. And Jared did it. He went all the way, crept all the way up that rocky hill face, which Thuso can tell you was not easy to walk on. Came all the way over Joel, and Chase is just there doing exactly what he should be doing. You know, he is Homer in that moment. It was really beautiful seeing him grow in the process to where he could command it, because take 1 typically is harder to be there on take 1 than it is to be there on take 5. But on that day, he was there. Yeah.
William, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I mean, I just think that Chase is a freakishly talented young man. You know, he is every bit a little kid, and a lot of fun to be around, and goofy and strange, funny on accident. It's great. But like, you know, because I didn't have a whole lot with Chase, but then I watched the show and I was like, I mean, my girlfriend and I, we were both like, yo, this is a really special performance and really special work. And, you know, and even watching him work on set, you know, he would be a kid in between takes and everything, but then he would drop in this way that I was just like, he's 10. How is this possible?
Yeah, and you know, Rebecca, since you are pulling quotes for Chase, I'll give him even more credit, because what I've described now is the process adjusting to meet Chase. You know, when there were moments where Chase was very clearly doing his thing, there were other times too. Him picking up the gun early in the Tennessee episode is not scripted. You know, we had filmed the scene, they bed down for the night, and at that point, because that was also late in production, I could talk to him as an adult. And I talked to the adults responsible for him on set first. I said, do you think it would be okay to ask him to do this? And they said, yeah, if he's comfortable with it. And we had a conversation about it. I said, you know, when Ridgway's asleep, you know, I think as a kid, you might go and pick up his gun. And he said, yeah, you know, I think Homer would do that because he idolizes Ridgway. And I was like, oh, I don't even have to give you direction. He's got it. And so we did it. And what you're watching now is, you know, we did that scene and Chase is creating that moment because it's not scripted, just understanding how Homer would behave in that moment. And it's one of my favorite little bits in that episode. So he grew in the process. And yeah, I think it's because sometimes you cast a 15-year-old who looks 10, but I always think it's so much better when you have someone who is young, you know, because I think what that character's about is indoctrination, you know, it's about grooming, it's about how we internalize self-hatred to a certain degree. And we often see these people at the age of 40 and 50, and we go, how did they get that way? And then here comes Chase Dillon, you know, and somehow through the spirit, through good parenting, whatever the hell, you know, he's a conduit for us to explore it.
And I never had any scenes with Chase personally. In fact, I remember one day, the only time we would really ever see one another is when we would sort of cross paths on set. So I would finish my day and he was beginning his. And I remember one day he was like, man, Aaron, you haven't seen me act, have you? And I was like, yeah, dude, I haven't.
That sounds just like you.
I could see him today. I would say, Chase, I have seen you act and you are extraordinary. I can't get my head around how a young boy of that age can bring out such a realistic, believable, and just phenomenal performance. It's extraordinary. He's extraordinarily talented and such a bright light.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, it's Rhonda. Thank you guys for hanging in there. I'm sorry, I promise you I'm not in witness protection or anything like that. But my last question is about episode 9. And I want to direct it to Barry and to William. Barry, there is a lot of death. I mean, there's death in every episode. Mm-hmm. So talk about the difference between filming the other deaths, which are more about victimization, and then filming episode 9, where we see heroic death. And we don't get to see this when it comes to Black people and our past. And then for William, a lot of people know you from The Good Place. And when we see you as Royal, this is someone we have not seen. You're a hero, you're strong, and you're a protector. So talk about being able to play that kind of character in this industry, and especially in this time period.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick, I promise. I'll say, man, killing Royal was hard for me, man. And it's such a great death. I mean, you just like, man, you did it. Because I kept trying to find ways to not have edits. And the choreography of that moment, you just did it, bro. Thank you. I did want to kill him, but you know, it's a tragic death and a heroic death. You're right. You know, like I said earlier, at the beginning of the show, we're in the world that we know. And I think the death that takes place in the first episode, one, it's rooted in a very fact-based sort of representation of death for that moment. I do think, though, one, when the boy Chester is beaten, Cora has this heroic act where she jumps atop of him, you know, to spare him from that beating. I think also, too, we see a white man die in episode 1, tragically, and also Big Anthony dies as well. We actually never see Ridgway kill anyone but white people in this show, which is something people don't pick up on, but I was very adamant about. And you're right. Once we get to Valentine Farm, at that point, Cora's on this journey. She's taking back possession of herself, and we see Black folks who have full possession of themselves. One of the things I think was cool about working with the cast in the show, the line that Gloria Valentine says, a shot per man and then powder and rod, we can get on them quick. That was actually Royal's line. But I was there and Amber was just so damn good. I was like, yo, the ladies got it right now. And so as I said, Amber, can you say this line? She calls it a shot per man and then powder and rod. She was so intense. And I knew I wanted her to have the really big heroic moment where she runs up the stairs and then down the stairs, and there's no visual effects there. It's all one take, one shot. Amber goes up them stairs and hills, she comes down. Both the shots are real. I mean, just so dope. It wasn't originally scripted that way, Rhonda. So I do think it's the right question to ask. We were walking through because we had to choreograph all the stunts in that sequence. The Gloria Valentine part where she runs up the stairs, that was scripted, but there was a lot more Black Death in the sequence as originally conceived. And as we were there walking the space, because we had to block out the choreography, because with that many stunts, that kind of action sequence, I like to be very loose, but you got to be very planned. And I was just walking around and I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so I started to go back in and sort of recalibrate and sort of look for these moments of very grounded and realistic heroism, because I knew people were fighting back. But militaristically, what we don't talk about the condition of American slavery, this was a military operation between communication and weaponry. We were so outnumbered. It wasn't like Haiti. In Haiti, I think there were 500,000 slaves and there were maybe 50,000 white folks on the island of Haiti. It wasn't the same in the States, and the weaponry was much, much different. And yet I thought, you know what, to hell with that shit. At a certain point, you know what I'm saying? Gloria's going to give the rally cry and they're going to come out the front of that damn church and William, because we did that so fast. William's teeth, all his good place fangs are all out. He's screaming as he's choking homeboy out. And it's like, yeah, because this is what has been visited upon us. And all this energy, maybe it was my energy, all this pent up energy just has to be unleashed. The same thing with her. If you've read the book, she doesn't get to stand over my man and hold that pistol in the book. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, that's gotta happen. That's gotta happen. And then I'll kick it back to William real quick, but we came up with the idea that Royal teaches her how to shoot when we were in the writer's room. And we had the whole line about the Second Amendment. We did this big Steadicam shot. He hands her the gun. The sound gets all weird, boom. Ridgway, and I don't know if anybody caught this, Ridgway walks into Royal's cabin while the debate is going on. He looks at a chair and there's a gun on that chair. He picks that gun up, he puts it in his waistband, he carries it out. They're going down in the tunnel. He passes Royal's gun to Homer. When they fall down, Homer drops Royal's gun on the floor. Now, Cora's going down in the hatch. She's reaching for the rifle. She sees her lover's gun. And so the first gun she was ever given, ever placed in her hand, where a man tells her, the episode starts, it's like the Declaration of Independence. You got to go out and test it for yourself. He's like, the Second Amendment, this is your right. Hands her that gun. That same gun, she stands over this man and he's talking all this shit and pop, 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 pop. I love it, man. I love it. I love it. And so thank you for the question, because it was something that I had to get out of my head just as a filmmaker, get into my body, as someone who just needs this. As a Black person who just needs this release. And that's what the sequence became about.
Yeah, like I at this point in the process, cheating was gone, especially when it came to the Battle of Valentine Farm. And, I think that, one of the things that I sort of hold on to is that, like, a lot of the violence visited upon Black people in this country in the past is in reaction to Black people claiming their personhood. So it's yes, there is, that is victimization, when someone does, lynch somebody, like that is that, but sometimes it's coming from a Black person being like, oh, you're not going to just slap me in my face, I'm going to slap you back. There's a lot of folks that did defend themselves and paid the ultimate price because they just weren't gonna take it. And so there was, for me, honestly, like in that moment when I run out of the church and I, choked this dude, that was the moment where I felt like I'm gonna lose control and actually hurt somebody. I wasn't gonna hurt him. I'm little. He's a big man. But like, there was something cathartic in fighting back and seeing that and getting to do that and not just plead and cry. It's like, okay, well, if I'm going out, I'm taking some of y'all with me. And so, for me, like, as hard and as tragic as it was, I mean, as a viewer, as a Black American dude, I needed to fight back. I needed to be a part of that part of the storytelling. And so, yeah, it's different. I feel like, you know, in a lot of these stories, we don't see that part. We don't see the part where, you know, we fight back. And I feel like it's necessary. It's necessary to see that was sometimes the trigger for white violence, you know, was just claiming your personhood.
Yeah, I know we're done as the last question, but I just thought of something. I've been off of Twitter, but I logged back in the other day, just to you know, check my DMs and whatnot, and some dude was basically live tweeting as he was watching episode 9, and he was pissed at the start of the shootout. He's like, hey, Barry Jenkins, blah blah, all the Black masculine men get killed, and then you're like, damn, you know, these white people always get to survive. And then he's like, oh shit, yeah, oh my bad, Barry, I was out of pocket. Because by the time he got to the end of the episode and the fighting back was done, but he was riding the wave as he was watching it. And I was like, yeah, because we're used to it going one way. What does my man say? You want it to be one way, but it's the other way, you know? It's the other way. That's a Wire joke for anybody out there who's a Wire fan. This was nice, y'all. This was real good. Carolyn, it's nice to see you again. It's been a while.
Thuso, William, and Aaron, thank you so much. You did a wonderful, wonderful job. Barry, you did it again, buddy. Congratulations. AAFCA TV honors, by the way, is August 21st, the California Yacht Club. Okay. Mark your calendar.
Yes, sir.
On behalf of the world's largest group of Black critics, thank you so much. The Underground Railroad is currently airing on Amazon Prime. Make sure you watch it. Have a blessed day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.